What's up, Savvy Expats? In today's video, we're diving into 10 things you'll love about the Philippines. Alright, without wasting time, let's get into it. So kicking off this list, the first thing you'll love about the Philippines is that it's stress-free. Hitting up the resorts, getting massages, and eating out for unbelievably cheap prices sounds like the stress-free life to me. The beauty about living in the Philippines is that you can afford these luxuries for much cheaper than those well-known islands like Hawaii. And what is more stress-free than never having to worry about whether or not your purchase will break the bank? Not to mention, the overall environment of the Philippines makes for a much more relaxing life. If you're out in the province surrounded by nature, away from the hustle and bustle, then everything slows down. So if you're constantly working and you're anxious, spend a couple weeks out in the province or even a month and you'll feel like your worries have seemingly disappeared. But at the same time, you don't want to lose yourself in this stress-free life. As I've talked about in my past video, several expats have talked about losing motivation for life after extended periods of time in the province. Because the life is somewhat disconnected from the rest of the world, you kind of just go your own way and lose track of time. Depends on the person, but this leads to them no longer having drive to do anything else. But overall, life is generally more peaceful in the Philippines depending on 3 factors. First off, where you live. First off, if you're living in a highly congested and overcrowded city, then you could hardly feel stress-free. After all, most of you are leaving your countries to get away from that. Second, your routine and priorities. If you're moving to the Philippines retired, semi-retired, or just working as a digital nomad, then it's needless to say that you're gonna enjoy life here. Obviously, you're working on your own terms or not working at all, so that's very little burden on your shoulders. And third, who you're around. Your company, not only in the Philippines, but just anywhere you go, will be a huge dictator on how you feel. Generally, if you're leaving the West for a set-apart island like the Philippines, everything will feel more solitude to you. Now, for the second thing you'll love about this country is that the Philippines is still yet to be fully discovered. Unlike Hawaii, the Bahamas, and Greece, there's still parts of the Philippines that still has yet to be discovered. Not only does this mean less commercialization and tourists, but also cheaper prices. Palawan and Boracay is an exception to this though. So if there's any country with countless hidden gems and untouched spots, it's the Philippines. For example, a few of these spots yet to be fully discovered include Iloilo, Zambales, Camigan, and Batanes. That's just to name a few, but let's just keep this between you and I, Savvy Expats. In the places I named, you can find untouched beaches with live coral, rolling meadows, and even newly developed cities in places like Iloilo. So undoubtedly, one of the biggest draws about living in the Philippines is it not being oversaturated with big commercialization developments. Seems like the Ayala, Megaworld, and SM players want to keep the competition out. Now, moving on to perhaps the most significant reason why expats love the Philippines at number 3, that is the low cost of living. As I've mentioned countless times in the past, living in a country that won't break the bank is a huge attraction point. Now, with gas and food prices soaring in the US, this sort of affordable lifestyle seems more appealing than ever. There's a grocery store we go to here in BGC called The Landmark, which is where we get our steaks. Though good USDA prime steaks is rare in the Philippines, this is one of the few places that you can get a good quality steak behind the butcher's counter here in the Philippines. When we first bought the ribeyes, we thought that $30 to $40 was actually pretty high up there compared to what we used to spend back in the States for those kind of steaks. But now, with prices shooting up in the States, getting these kind of rare items in the Philippines is almost equivalent to how much it costs in the States. How crazy does that sound? Whoever thought that Philippine beef prices, which is usually much higher than in the States, is around the same price, if not cheaper nowadays. But aside from that, everything else will be much lower cost in the Philippines. Your monthly expenses, your food costs, your rental costs, almost everything. And that leads me to my next point. And number 4, you will love the affordable prices of the Philippines. Massages, spas, maids, drivers, cooks. All of these are luxuries to have in the West, but is completely affordable in the Philippines. Massages in the Philippines can cost as low as $10 for an hour, and that's pushing it in some places. I'm not savvy when it comes to spas, but I know that at least one trip to a spa in the US would cost at least $100 per visit. Here in the Philippines, it'd be much less. And if you want house help to never have to do chores again, the average maid salary in the Philippines is $200 per month. And if you want an on-call driver to never have to drive here or take public transportation, then the average driver's salary in the Philippines is $250 per month. And if you want to cook to never have to make your own meals or shop out for ingredients, the average cook's salary in the Philippines is also $250 per month. Need I say more? All of these posh luxuries to have are so unbelievably affordable in the Philippines. Now, moving on to the fifth thing you love about the Philippines, that is being able to live a hybrid lifestyle. What this basically means is that you'll have the option between living in a provincial area with a beach or a city in the Philippines. For many people, they don't want to live out in the province full time. Be it that it's too far from the ideal hospitals, there's a lack of modern conveniences, and it's too secluded, it's only nice to spend some time out in the province for many people. So to be able to have the option to live in a city or just outside of one gives you the best of both worlds. And in experiencing this hybrid lifestyle, you'll also get to access what you need from a Western society. For example, you want to be close to good hospitals, so you might choose to live in or just outside of Metro Manila. You want to be near an airport, so you can choose to live near Mactan International Airport if you want to live in Cebu. And if you want to be near good restaurants and stores, then you could live in the city. One of the best parts about living in Philippine cities is that you're very near the province. An hour-long drive can get you out from the hustle and bustle into the provincial beaches, vice versa. Now, for the sixth thing you'll love about the Philippines, which is actually double-sided for some, that is the laid-back pace of life. Many people move to the Philippines to get away from the fast pace of life in the West. The constant work, the pressure, the payments are all things that some people want to get away from and move to the Philippines to escape to. So the relaxing, slow pace of life in the Philippines is a huge attraction point. Being able to let your shoulders down and relax sounds like what some of you may be looking for. The laid-back lifestyle will also give you time to enjoy the less materialistic things in life as well. So needless to say, the Philippines will give you that pura vida life just like Costa Rica. Moving on to the seventh thing you'll love about the Philippines, that is the hospitable people. This has got to be one of the main reasons why foreigners choose to live in the Philippines. The fact that the people are friendly, welcoming, and hospitable really seals the deal on why people choose this country. Of course, you can't call a place home unless it feels like home. Well, thanks to the locals, they make you feel at home because of how open and kind they usually are. Just like any country, you'll come across jerks, but for the most part, the Filipino people are great. They're very family-oriented, the culture revolves around the food table, and they love to have fun. If this is also your jam, then you will have a great time with the locals. Now, moving on to the eighth thing you'll love, which is what I personally love about the Philippines, is the freedom of routine. Of course, you can get this in any country you go to, but many of you are leaving the rat race for the Philippines. If you've saved up or have chosen to work remotely, the freedom of routine factor in the Philippines is priceless. The thing I love about living in the Philippines is that because I don't attend traditional public school or work a traditional job, I have freedom on how I want to structure my day. If there's one thing the Italians teach, it's that they preach that your job should always be structured around your lifestyle. That's honestly a great motto, and that's what I and several other expats do in the Philippines. When I want to go for a swim at my condo pool, I go for a swim. When I want to go for a workout, I go for a workout. When we want to eat out, we can eat out at any time of the day. So having the freedom to dictate your own routine is one of my favorite parts about living in the Philippines. Moving on to the ninth thing you love about the Philippines, that is of course the breathtaking scenery. If there's anything that leaves an impression on the people that visit the Philippines, it's the natural wonders here. The waterfalls, caves, beaches, and lagoons are scenic here on another level. So such a simple thing like the nature of the Philippines makes living here amazing. Now for the 10th and last thing you love about the Philippines, that is the weather. This is perhaps one of the most common reasons why expats either move to the Philippines or move out of the Philippines. When you're living in a cold and dark place, and I've experienced this myself in Chicago, then sometimes you're just dying to get some heat and some sun. So while it does get really hot in the Philippines, many people don't mind it because they prefer the heat over the cold. It is without a doubt a reminder of living in a tropical island every day. So there you have it, Savvy Expats. That is 10 things you love about the Philippines. If you enjoyed this video, a like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And so thank you for watching, Savvy Expats, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.